Today we're going to be doing the SR32 leveling guide. This is going to start in the 30s as opposed to starting at like the low 20s or the teens. I'll put the Grim Tools link in the pinned comment below for the early levels, but the only thing to talk about there is the skills, and you can kind of just get an idea from the Grim Tools. But once you get to 30 and you go above that, there's more to talk about when it comes to gear and devotions and trying to figure out what pieces you're going to need for the future component parts. All right, now we're going to move to our mid 30s for this build. The skills that we're going to be using are Flame Touch for a 5+1 modified by Temper for a 1+7. Fire Strike is going to be a 3+7 with 2+3 in Explosive Strike, 1 in Searing Strike, and then 1+1 in Static Strike. For Blackwater Cocktail, we've got a 3+6 with 1 in High Potency, and then a 3+3 in Demon Fire. We have a 3+1 in Flashbang, a 2+1 in Searing Light, a 2+1 in Vindictive Flames, and also a 2+1 in the Wrath. Now we have access to Thermite Mine with a 7+1, and this is going to be our main resist shred that we use to really apply all the burn damage that we have. And we'll go to the Arcanist now with a 4 in the Exchange, with 2 in Manifestation, and then 2 in Overload. We have 1 in Mirror, and we have 10 in Sphere. We have 3 in Arcane Will, and we have 2 in Nullification. It's at this point now where we have basically the same framework that we're going to be using in the future. We have a couple extra skills like Hellfire Mine that's going to modify the Thermite Mine, and then Brimstone, which is going to modify Fire Strike. But our active skills are basically what we have now is what we're going to have in the future, just a better version of them. It's around this level that we also start getting access to some of the monster infrequent items that we're going to take up into the next couple tiers of the build. For example, this Skullbreaker here is going to give us fire and burn damage. It's also going to convert some of the physical damage to fire, and then it's going to give us 3 to the fire strike and then 18% to fire strike's weapon damage. Plus, it'll give us Ring of Flame, which is another on-hit ability. So a lot of things that happen with this item, and all the monster infrequents are good because you can farm them just from targeting specific monsters or bosses, and the drop rates are pretty good. We'll go over exactly what we can farm here for this build, and then we'll talk about some of the things that are just fillers. Another one of those things is the Incendiary Cask, and this also modifies our Fire Strike with a +3 and then gives us some extra damage to it. The Shambler's Heart is going to give us fire and burn damage with offensive ability, increase our armor, also give us a little bit of resist, but it gives us +3 to temper, and then increases the offensive ability of Flame Touch by 8%. The next and probably most important thing, because this will be the item that we use in the very final endgame build, is going to be the Codex. And this drops from the Steps of Torment boss. I farmed him a whole bunch of times. I like the place. It's one of my favorite areas to do. And I think we're going to run through some of that actually, and I'll show you where this drops from. But this gives us 2 to Blackwater Cocktail, 2 to Demon Fire, and then modifies our Blackwater Cocktail so that we deal more damage, and then it converts any of the extra chaos damage to fire, so we're applying more damage as a whole. Another thing that we can directly farm for is going to be the Incendiary Shoulder Plates. This is going to give us some raw fire and burn, but a good resist profile with a +3 to Inferno and Blackwater Cocktail. One more infrequent that we can target farm is going to be this Crest, and this is going to give us +3 to Temper and a little bit extra Flame Touched physical damage, which we don't exactly need, but every little bit helps. For the belt, we have the Fiend Leather Girdle, which is going to give us fire and burn damage with offensive ability, and then a +1 to all of our skills in Demolitionist. The last thing here is the Inferno Relic that gives us fire and burn damage, also increases our duration, and then it gives us Volcanic Fury, which is an activated item if we choose to use it, but it deals fire and burn damage over the area. Now that we've talked about the target items that we can farm, we can kind of talk about the filler items now. This is going to be your pants, your chest piece, the boots, and the gloves. Kind of fit anything that you can find in here. These gloves are actually quite good. They give us fire and burn damage and then a +2 to explosive strike, but not very much else. They're not mandatory at all, so again, they fall into the filler category. And then the last thing is going to be the rings for the filler category. Whatever you have that might give you some good resist or some good fire damage. Now we'll look at the devotions very quickly. I usually just grab the crossroads for right now, and then I grab turtle, which is going to modify our protection sphere. Then I grab imp, and I throw aether fire on our Blackwater cocktail. We grab the fiend, and we put flame torrent on our fire strike. We grab ghoul, and this is going to go on our exchange. And then we grab the witchblade, which is going to take eldritch fire and go on flashbang. That's a snapshot of the build as it stands right now. Let's go jump into the Steps of Torment. I'll show you the boss there and we'll go kill a couple of things. For anyone who doesn't know, the Steps of Torment are a roguelike dungeon in the bottom of an area here. In the roguelike dungeons, you need a skeleton key to access. And then if you die, you will be kicked out of the dungeon and you don't get to do any of the end rewards for that. They're really good loot. They're more difficult, but they're a good time. They all have modifiers on the levels, and they're different every time you do it. So maybe you get more burn damage, or maybe you take more aether damage, different things like that. So it keeps the runs fresh every time. As I'm running to the Steps of Torment, I see a totem, so naturally, let's take a detour and see how this build performs over here with this. Just like the original build for the end game, you start it with the flashbang, then you throw down Hellfire Mines, and then you use the Blackwater cocktail to deal your damage. One thing that is missing from this build right now is our rune, which is our right click, and it gives us a little bit of movement and extra damage. That's going to come from the rovers over there by the Forgotten Gods. So not everybody's going to have access to it unless you did it prior to this. So I'm not going to throw it on just yet. We can see the Steps of Torment entrance right here, which is just above from the teleporter. Now we are on Elite difficulty this time. I think in the future episodes, the middle game where we are kind of right now, we're going to start playing on Elite, and then once we go to the 70 section, we're going to go on Ultimate. I'm assuming most people who want a leveling guide probably aren't starting their character on Ultimate. You can, it's just much more difficult to do that. Most people will probably play normal, and then if they have it unlocked for their tokens, they'll start on Elite. And then you can see in the top right corner how we have these different modifiers. The green ones are positive, and then the red ones are going to be negative. The monsters that we're fighting down here are level 45. There are certain level limits for zones when you play on difficulties, and this one doesn't drop below 45. Considering that we have a difference of about 10 levels, we're doing alright. If I remember correctly, there are 3 steps to the stairs, and then after that, the skeleton key dungeon is at the very end. This right here is a good test of how the build handles a lot of enemies at one time. It's one of the reasons that Burn is my favorite. It just clears the entire screen of anything. Okay, I think that's a good showcase of what we're doing here. I'll probably come back to the Steps of Torment when we do the next higher section of it. I didn't realize that the differential was going to be so high between what the minimum level is. Alright, that's going to be it for our 30s early game. The next time I see you will be somewhere in the 50s. Now into our mid 50s. We're currently 57 right now. And at this level, there's a couple things we can start to grab that we're going to take into the future. At level 40, we unlock the Ascendant Conduit, Monster Infrequent, and this is the item that I take all the way up into the endgame build. It gives us a modifier to Vindictive Flames and the Sphere of Protection, plus it grants us Ring of Flame, and gives us +3 to Vindictive Flames and +2 to Thermite Mine. One thing you can pick up at level 50 is the Outcast Burning Vestments, and this comes from the Outcast faction, so you're guaranteed to have this without any farming at all. We're going to be looking at the Incendiary Cask now, and we have 2 of the prefix and suffix that we're looking for. That's going to be Devastating and then Ulzin's Flame. This gives us a +3 to Fire Strike and then modifies Fire Strike with extra damage and then converts any of the lightning damage to fire. We're going to be looking at the Shambler's Heart again. This is going to be the level 52 version of it, and we're starting to get some better suffix and prefixes. The Devastating and the Scorching are both good. They give us fire, offensive ability, increase the armor, and then give us +3 to temper, plus an extra 8% to offensive ability. We're going to have the Codex as well, and the 2 prefixes and suffixes are going to be the Destroyer and the Voidfire that you can go for to mid-max. There is a couple other ones that also work, but I find that these are probably the best. This gives us fire and burning damage, but it gives us +4 to Blackwater Cocktail and then +2 to Demon Fire. It also modifies Blackwater Cocktail so that we reduce that skill recharge and then increase the fire and burn damage. Then it also converts 100% of the chaos damage into fire damage. The other monster and freak we're going to be having again is the incendiary shoulder plates. Here we have the devastating and heroism prefix and suffix on them. There's a lot of options here, but this one gives a good bit of fire and burn with some good resist as well. It gives us a +3 to Blackwater Cocktail and +3 to Inferno. For everything else on the character sheet, these are filler slots, so you kind of just get whatever you can. The rings will be like that. The legs are also like that. I like these ones. If you can find them, they're good. And so are the bottom 3 here. At level 60, we're going to be getting a new relic, so we're 3 off from that, but I wanted to wait and show the new relic for the last section of the build. We'll take a look at our skill line real quick. We have Flame Touch with a 9+2, Temper with a 1+5, Fire Strike is a 7+5. This is a main damage dealer, so we're really going to start pumping more into it. We've got 3+3 for Explosive Strike, 3 into Searing Strike, 1+2 into Static Strike, and also remember that we convert this lightning to fire damage. And then we have a 4+2 for Brimstone. Blackwater Cocktail is going to be a 3 plus 11, so a lot of gear is going to be building into this. We have the 1 in High Potency, the 3 plus 6 in Demon Fire, and the 3 plus 4 in Agonizing Flame. We have the 8 plus 4 for Thermite Mine, and the 4 plus 2 for Hellfire Mine. 3 plus 2 for Flashbang, 2 plus 2 for Searing Light, 2 plus 5 for Vindictive Flame, and then 3 plus 2 for the Wrath. For our Arcanist skill line, we have the 6 points in the Exchange, 3 in Manifestation, 2 in Overload, 2 in Balance, 1 in the Mirror, 6 plus 2 for the Sphere, and 5 in the Will, and 2 in the Nullification. So not too much in the Arcanist right now. We really are leaning more towards the Demolitionist. At this point, you should have enough to completely fill out the Devotion tree. So we'll take a look at this again. We're going to have 2 in the Crossroads for the health. We're going to have Turtle, Imp, Fiend, Chariot of the Dead, the Witchblade, the Ghoul, the Magi, the Raven, the Quill, the Harvest Scythe. Now that we've quickly gone over that, let's jump into the Steps of Torment now, and I can show you how this build works. Here we are on the way to the Steps of Torment, but I see a totem, so we gotta stop and do that. We're currently playing on Elite right now, which is a good idea for about the 50s. Once we go to the 70s, that will be the ultimate version of the build. Usually I try to show the first 2 sections of the build on Elite, and then the last portion on Ultimate. Very few people are going to start the game on Ultimate, but I think people who have played the game before will definitely start their first character on Elite, so it's a little bit more reasonable. And then that means that anything that is shown on Elite is going to be just that much more powerful if you're playing on Normal. So if you remember last time we were here, everything scaled to 45 or so, which was about 10 levels over us, and now we're only about 4 or 5 levels under, so the scaling is a little bit better. As a side note here, for people who are more new to the game, if you look in the top left corner here, you see these numbers called AO and DA. And what these are your offensive ability and your defensive ability. Essentially, it's a comparison of how well you attack and defend compared to the enemy. So if you see that it says 17% and 100% on the OA here, that means I have a 100% chance to hit every time I attack, and then like a 17 to 20% chance to crit whenever I hit. And then for the defensive ability, it means that I have an 83% chance to get hit with a 0% chance to crit. So that number becomes very important later on in the game because trying to minimize taking any damage at all is the easiest way to have survivability. One of the things that people don't prioritize is their offensive and defensive ability, but try to heavily lean into different kind of resistances, and that will be good if you do get hit, but the idea is you want to get hit as least as possible, and then when you do attack, you want to make sure you're applying damage as much as possible. Alright, let's head down into step 3 here. We were just in pain. We are currently in misery now. I like the names for all these places. Something to be aware of down here is that the enemies use piercing from the archers, and right now my piercing resist is a little bit low. So I would usually change an augment or something like that so I could compensate for it in the build if I was going to use this. Let's see if we can take out this nemesis that spawned. Here we're able just to burn down the entire field while we do whatever we gotta do, and then we'll return back to the nemesis. Alright, not too bad. So I would say if you could take down the Nemesis with this build, it's probably fine to use just as it is without really having to tweak too much. The only thing I would do is just work on the vitality and the piercing resist, and that's just a matter of putting different components on. This guy right here is the boss you need to fight in order to drop the codex that I'm using. There we go, and look at that. We actually got the Aether Fire Codex of Scorching, so this is a very good version of it. It's not perfect, but it does apply a lot of the things we need, and you can see that the fire damage is actually higher on the one that dropped than the one that we have right now. And then the base item is the item that gives us the Blackwater cocktail modifier, so you're going to get that no matter what you get for the prefix and for the suffix. Here we are at the level 77 version of the build, and it's when you hit about 72 to 75, you get access to the weaker version of the endgame set pieces. So for example, the endgame piece is up in the 90s for the Infernal Knights jacket, but this is the level 75 version. So it's the same gear, just better. And it makes it easy to transition from the 70s to the high 90s. We'll go over the important pieces here. Again, we have the Ascendant Conduit that's coming back. This is going to be the level 75 version. We have the Infernal Knights jacket. This is going to be the level 75 version of the set. The Shambler's Heart is back at level 75, and the same thing with the Codex. One new addition is going to be the Empowered Ember Grip Hands. These give us +2 to Thermite Mine. Another new addition is going to be the Vulcanum. This is a metal that gives us +3 to Thermite Mine, and then also gives us Magma Orb. At level 60, we got access to Annihilation, and this is probably one of my favorite relics. It's the one where all the meteors start dropping from the sky, so it's just aesthetically pretty cool. That pretty much wraps up the gear. Because we're starting to use set pieces, 4 of the pieces are immediately done, and then these 2 are the monster infrequents. The amulet is the monster infrequent, and the relic is a new epic metal one, along with the gloves. The boots and the pants, those are whatever you can find. The same thing with the 2 rings, with the exception of the Seal of the Blazing Inferno. This is pretty good because it gives us +2 to 2 of the spells that we use, and it gives us Ring of Flame. Like all the level 70 versions of the build, we're going to be on Ultimate here, and these ones are going to be built out almost completely. You can pretty much grab this and start playing with it. The resist profile is a little bit off, but it just takes some tweaking and then getting better gear for like the boots and the ring, the things that I didn't really focus too much on. We'll look at the skills briefly, starting with the Demolitionist. The main things here is that we're starting to stack up more points into like Fire Strike and Blackwater Cocktail, and then Thermite Mine and Hellfire Mine, just so that we further reduce their effective resistances. For the Arcanist tab, the big thing now is that we're going to take our bar to 32, and then we're going to have conversion for the modification of Sphere, which we're going to have at 12 now. This is important because the higher up you go, the more crowd control and stuns you have to deal with, and those are things that will get you killed. The devotion tree is going to be the same that was in the level 50 version. You should have that maxed out, or if not, start working towards it. But now that we've gone through this, let's jump into the Steps of Torment on Ultimate and take a look and see how it runs. Of course, on the way we got to do any totems we see. So here is a Ancient Spirit totem. The ancient versions of them should be a little bit more difficult. We can see now that the build really is coming into full swing here. The idea is to kind of spam 1, 2, and 3, and then every once in a while you hit the right click so you smash down on them, and then you just M1. It's a rather simple build, but it's very satisfying, especially if you like fire and things like that. Alright, here we are at the Steps of Torment again. I've mentioned this before in videos, but this is my favorite class combination. Something about having large fire AoEs and being able to cast spells like the Sphere of Protection for like flat absorption really lets you focus on just dealing damage in the way that you want to. We can see that the levels are still slightly above us. They're about 80, 81, and I think that's normal. Most of the time when you're in the treacherous domains, they're going to be slightly above your level. You can see just how well the fire and area of effect stuff works for taking out large groups of monsters. I'll go ahead and run this one all the way down until the bottom of the boss. Let's see how the Nemesis does here. So now we're fighting a level 86. This guy's a little bit more difficult. You can see that he actually has a Sunder ability now, so we have to be careful for that. And at this point, this is where some of the abilities we haven't talked about, like Nullification, comes in, where I can nullify the Sunder, or I can use my mirror where I can reflect all the damage that I get dealt at one time. Okay, a little close here and there. And we got a double rare. It's pretty nice. And here we are at the last boss again. I would say importantly for this fight is to make sure you deal with the ads that run around. Otherwise, it'll increase the incoming damage by a little bit too much. So kill the archers as they spawn back up. And there we have it, another archive. So that's going to wrap up the video for today. In the pinned comment below, I'm going to put the 15, the 35, the 55, and then now like the 75 versions of the build for the Grim tools. That way you can get a snapshot without having to watch the video and then pause and try and figure out what's going on. You can have just a clear template of it. But if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and if you want to see anything else, let me know.